Hi there, and welcome to the 55th episode of Career Stories Live. So today I'm joined by Ella Orr. Hi, Ella.
Hello.
Thank you
Great
very
to
much
be
for
here.
coming on. So Ella is a personal branding coach, social media trainer, and media and communications officer. So very busy. So looking forward to chatting about that. So thank you, Ella, for coming on.
Not at all. Really good to be here today.
Yeah, and I think we first met through the Espresso Plus community, didn't we? I was trying to think if we were connected before that, but I think that is probably when we got in touch with each other.
Yeah. I think we kind of knew of each other because we sort of move in similar networks, obviously. But
Yes.
yeah, it was really the Espresso Plus community that got us chatting to each other, and we're chatting more and more now, aren't we, Sarah?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Lots of crossover.
Yeah.
So, as always, anyone that's watching, please do comment to let us know that you're here and where you're from. And feel free to ask any questions or give your views in the comments. If you're watching on replay, leave your comments and we'll go back to those afterwards. And we have Jeff here. So, Jeff's always first here. So, thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Really nice to see you. So the basis for my lives, if anyone hasn't seen them before, basically I've always been really interested in what people do, why they do it. I like learning about different roles and career paths. And that kind of gave me the idea for the live, and to kind of try and inspire thought from people about where they could source information or get advice, and just really talk about different careers. So, and normally the guests give people advice on how to get started in that role. So that's kind of the background. So with that in mind, Ella, could you give us a brief background into you and what it is you're doing right now work-wise?
Hi everyone, so I'm Ella and I have my own business which is called Much More Social. It's a social, I say it's sort of social media marketing business, but it's focused more on personal branding. So I don't do social media management as such, even though I do know a lot about social media. But I help people with being seen, becoming known, being remembered through their personal brand on primarily on social media channels, and obviously that would be LinkedIn, Instagram. I can help people with TikTok, Facebook, and any of the others that people might be wanting to use. But really, it's about people getting that online visibility, whether they're a business owner or sometimes, and those are primarily people who work in regulated professions. So that I mean people who work in finance, legal, architecture, all of those professions where people feel that they can't be themselves and be natural. But then I also do help. I also help people who are working within companies and are wanting to have more visibility in terms of progressing in their careers.
Okay, excellent. So there's a lot in there, isn't there? And I'm sure we'll talk about it in a bit more detail. But I just all of those different social media outlets that you mentioned, it must be really hard to keep up to date with all the new changes and stuff on across all of those.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously, I have my first loves, which are LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yes.
But obviously, if somebody says to me, "Oh, I want to have a particular strategy, say for Blue Sky or something like that," then I kind of know what are the kind of things to go and look for. Because the thing is, if you take a deep dive into all of these social platforms, you could be just falling down a horrendous rabbit hole. And
Yeah,
for a lot of
definitely.
people, it's about just kind of, get the basics right.
Yeah, work out what you need. We've got a few more people in. So Rebecca, hi Rebecca, nice to see you. Craig, so hiya Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Then Jeff's chatting to everyone else in the comments, so that's good to see.
We're having a party.
I know. And then Angie, so Angela, so Angie's my neighbour in Marizine in Cornwall. So thank you for joining, Angie. So it's cool to see you here as well. Okay, so back to the question. So early careers, did you have a job whilst you were at school or at college? And if you did, how has that helped you?
I did have a job. My very first job was working in a boutique in northeast London, which was where I was born and brought up. I was working in a fashion boutique, and it was pretty ropey. And I was getting paid £6 for the day. But we are talking about a long, long time ago, because I'm that sort of age. But yeah, I sort of kind of progressed in like well, actually, having worked at that pokey little boutique, I then progressed to a job at Top Shop, if anyone remembers
Oh,
Top
wow,
Shop,
yes.
at the flagship store in Oxford Street. And of course,
Oh, cool.
I felt so proud of myself because I was in my we had our Top Shop uniforms, and we'd get on the tube and go up to the West End, and it was
Yeah,
just really cool. So yeah, I was mostly working in retail as a holiday job or a Saturday job.
yeah. That Top Shop was so cool. I remember going up there for days out with my friends. It was brilliant. Lots of my friends thinking they were going to be spotted like Kate Moss was in there. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Very funny. So do you think that's had an influence on like the personal brand? We were just chatting before, weren't we, about personal brands, not just about, how you look, but do you think that did have some sort of influence about, making sure you look how you need to look for whatever it is you're doing?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I did kind of like flirt with the idea of wanting to be a fashion designer. Goodness knows where that
Oh,
came
did
from,
you?
because I don't have any. I'm not visually, visual design is not my strong point. I mean, as far as the furthest I've got with that is managing to paint my wall purple because it ties in with my brand colours.
Excellent.
But no, I actually wanted to. I mean, music and singing was my thing, Sarah.
Really?
I really wanted to be a professional singer. That was what I
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
do,
Yeah.
and that's why I did. I did music and dance as a degree.
Okay. Which
Yeah,
leads on to my next question, was did
yeah.
you go to university, and what did you study, and how did you choose it? So you kind of answered that really, but
Yes, yeah. I mean, I have to say, and I hope this is like helpful to people who are watching or people who've got young people in their families. I was never particularly academic.
yeah,
I kind of just limped through my O levels, as they were at the time then, and my A levels. So thankfully, I did have like the creative arts to fall back on.
yeah,
And well, I still think I am a pretty good singer.
yeah,
So but really loved singing, and I loved, and I still do. I love anything in relation to the arts. I really
yeah,
do. It really
yeah,
saddens me to see how much it's been kind of like shoved out of the curriculum for young people.
yeah,
But yeah. I mean, it was so. Thankfully, I had that as something to fall back on, because I kind of always had it in my mind that I was going to go to uni.
you're right. Yeah,
That was the thing. It was kind of like the natural. No one in my family had ever been to university or done higher education, so it was kind of like, I'm going to go and see if I
oh,
can
that's
get a
cool.
degree.
Yeah, so you did. So did you try to get work as like a singer or a performer or something after uni? Yeah, and I'm guessing really hard.
Well, the thing was, it's inevitable, isn't it? I mean, I was at Polytechnic in Newcastle upon Tyne, and whilst I was there, I had an absolute ball. It was one of the best periods of my life. Three absolutely fantastic years, and I met somebody,
Yeah,
and we got engaged, and it was like, we're going to get married, and it was like, right, okay, and that was really what put pay to my dreams of becoming a singer, because I
yeah,
just thought I better get a proper job, because we were
right.
thinking about saving up for a mortgage. And
Yeah,
so that's really where I kind of suppressed the dream, really. And then even though when I was teaching, I was still doing a lot of music, because I went on to teaching after that.
yeah,
That's the next part of the story.
yeah,
I went on to teach, to do a teaching qualification after after I did my degree, because it was kind of, this was the sensible thing
yeah,
to
yeah,
do. But I always really sort of hankered after that, wanting to perform. And
yeah,
then I ended up singing. I did end up entering some talent competitions and singing in choirs, and I sang in a couple of bands,
yeah.
for about 20 years.
Oh, wow. Right, so you did do some of it, so that's good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but never enough to kind of think, right, I need to focus on this as a career.
yeah. But I guess that's the thing, isn't it? I was chatting to someone the other day who's head of early careers, and she was saying the degree subject is not always that important in terms of she was a financial services person. She said that we don't necessarily look for people that have done accounts or finance at university. It's anyone that's done a degree, because if they're disciplined enough to learn and write on whatever subject, then they can learn anything. So I
Interesting.
thought that's really reassuring to hear that, actually.
Yeah.
So if what you want to do at the start of uni is completely different by the end, don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I did manage to do the essays, and I
Yeah.
mean, I came out with a 2-1 in my
Yeah.
degree, so I was really,
That's
really
good.
happy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then obviously I had to kind of prove myself doing the postgraduate certificate in education, which is what I did, PGCE.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I can see Keith's mentioned here about singing and performing, helping
Yes.
to project on
Yeah.
social media. And I think that's the thing, all of that plus the writing that I had to do in my teaching in my degree, and then going on and obviously all the reports and everything else writing I've had to do in my teaching has set me up for being able to hopefully be a pretty clear communicator when it comes to social media.
Exactly. So it's kind of giving you the confidence as well, hasn't it? I guess if you're having to sing, then you've got confidence to kind of go out and talk to groups and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's really good. So thank you for commenting, Keith. That's really great. Okay, so that was early careers. We talked about universities. So let's go a bit more into your career then. So you got your PGCE.
Yes.
Yeah. So what did you do from there? Did you go straight into a teaching role at that point?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So that's how I ended up in the Midlands, because I live in Leicestershire,
Right.
which is in the middle of the country for anyone who's
Yeah.
not heard of Leicestershire before. But yeah, I ended up in Coventry actually to begin with, because my former husband, because I'm on husband number 2 now, he that's nothing to do with the fact that I didn't carry on with the singing career. But yeah, I ended up in Coventry, and I managed to get a job. Funnily enough, my former husband, his mum was a teacher, and she and all of his family, former husband's family, were kind of like, there was a lot of teachers in that family. So I used to kind of I got a kind of a good understanding and a good grounding, and I think there may have been some name dropping or something like that when I went for my first few interviews.
Yeah.
But I managed to get a job which was fantastic, again in a very tough school in Coventry. It was in the red light district of
Wow.
Coventry. And it was a Catholic school. And I must tell you this story, Sarah, just before we move on. So it was a Catholic school, and I distinctly remember us going to church for the various services that one had to go to, and a few ladies waiting outside, and my students, my pupils, going, "Oh, look, Miss!" Heads down, children, make the sign of the cross.
Oh, wow.
It was so funny. It was so funny. It really was literally a baptism of fire. Yeah. So that was spent a couple of years at that school, but the head teacher really took me under her wing, and it was awful to say it, because I know I was a bit of a teacher's pet, really, but I think I was the newly qualified teacher. I kind of said yes to everything. I worked really long hours, but I think there's a lesson in there about that.
Yeah, definitely. So what age were you teaching?
Oh gosh, I was at primary school, and I was at the top end. I was in year 5 and 6, which would have been top juniors.
Right. Yeah.
Very tough kids, really tough kids. But God, we did some brilliant things. I remember we did a production of Oliver, and I was like the musical director. And I mean,
so you were getting that kind of.
Oh yeah,
I guess in that respect.
Yeah, it was great, and the kids were. I remember like the girl who sang Nancy. I still remember to this day, and that's like, God, we're talking about 35 years ago, or whatever it was. Yeah, the girl who sang Nancy, the lad who played Artful Dodger. I just think, oh God, they had so much talent.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what did you do after that teaching role then? Did you stay in teaching? Did you go to something else?
Yeah, so I spent 13 years working in primary education, working in very tough schools, in Warwickshire, and then back in Coventry. And then, I think this was kind of where my mindset started to shift a little bit, and wondering about perhaps whether or not I was going to stay in education, even though I did stay in education. But I had a probably what you could say was a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
13 years, which culminated in me. I mean, it all came about of me sort of sitting crying in my stock cupboard. My new partner then at the time, who I'm married to now, just said to me, "Look, just pack it in. You don't have to do this."
Yeah.
So I left teaching in primary. Went into and didn't have a job, but I managed to get a job in September, working for an education charity. So I did,
Okay.
I did a few years working in education charities, and I think that's kind of like what helped me to see that education didn't have to be the way that it was in primary school. And it was great. I learned loads of. We were doing one of the charities I worked for was called Life Education Centres, and we were helping children up to age 11, from 3 to 11, to talk about healthy bodies, managing our emotions, and then it got on to talking about smoking and alcohol and drugs and prescribed drugs, and then getting on to talking about some of the harder drugs and stuff like that. But we did it all through drama and hot seating discussions. There was nothing written down on paper. Everything was about interactive activities with these young people, and I think I learned a lot about presentation skills through that, and active listening.
That's cool, and still kind of relevant to your degree as well. So you were getting that experience. It's a really interesting way to use what you learn at uni.
Yeah. And then after that, I went into, we haven't even got on to talking about social media marketing yet, but after that, I went on into working in FE college.
Right.
So to the other end of the career spectrum, teaching education spectrum, and finally teaching adults.
So
I was teaching basic maths and English. Again, I've always worked in sort of quite, tough scenarios, I suppose you could say, but it's real people, and it was, there were hard times. It was really hard, but also there were times, obviously, it was so rewarding.
So did you kind of actively go for those hard things, or was that just kind of what happened? Or
yes, I think probably I was kind of like drawn to that. I couldn't ever see myself and this is no judgment or anything, but I couldn't sort of necessarily see myself working in like a posh school somewhere, or a private school, or anything like that, and obviously, like, when cities in the Midlands, a lot of them are very, they're tough areas for young people to grow up. So
okay, so after the further education college, what did you do at that point?
This came the second phase of kind of mental and emotional turmoil, really. Because this is like now fast tracking to sort of 2016, and my mum passed away. I think that's what really made me think, do I really want to stay in education for the rest of my life, I should say. And I decided, I had a bit of a breakdown. I was very depressed, and I was thinking, I just don't want to stay in this career for the rest of my working life, because all I could see ahead of me was like waiting for the pension to come. I still got another 10 years then. I was 51 at the time, so I got another 10 years to sort of think about, or 9 years to think about. I've got to stay in this job day in, day out. It's really tough. And it wasn't about the students, it wasn't about the learners, it was about the system, it was about the bureaucracy, about the ridiculous hoops that we had to jump through. I kind of went into a really, really dark place for about a year. And then I was having acupuncture at the time, and my acupuncturist said to me, she was really helpful, because we did some NLP together. she was saying, you know, you've got to get yourself sorted out. She didn't say it to me like that, but she was saying, you know, my kind of embers were really about to go out. And she said, you know, we need to find something to light the fire again. And I was just sitting scrolling on my phone one day, and I thought, oh, scrolling on my social media, is there a job that you can do in this? And it turned out there was.
There was. Wow.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that was, and
how did you kind of make that leap then?
Because I was trying to find transferable. I was trying to find skills from teaching. I mean,
Yes.
I've been in this career for like over 25 years, and so many valuable skills that I've acquired.
Definitely.
So I just thought, what else can I do? And I didn't want to do tutoring or anything like that. And but then I thought, you know, the writing and the communication, and like being, like say, scrolling on my phone. And at the time, I was just on Facebook.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I'll just put that in on Google, see if I can find anything. And a course came up, which was Digital Mums.
Right.
And that was how I applied for the course. And again, I had all those self-doubts, those limiting self-beliefs that we have, that I was too old. You know, why would anybody want to take me on a course when I was 51? but I got onto it.
You got onto it.
And that's why I'm sitting here talking to you now, Sarah.
Excellent. And you ended up working for Digital Mums after that?
No. The way the course worked was every month there'd be a new cohort of women who were parents.
Okay.
I graduated from the course in November 2017, and and then we sort of joined a big Facebook group and everything else, and there'd be lots of talk about, you know, the jobs and the opportunities that were appearing and whatever, but everybody was going for the same roles.
Okay.
And that was when I kind of thought, I need to do something different, because I can't compete with, and it's horrible to talk about the people who I was training with and who I'd graduated with as my competitors, but they were.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't compete with them, because a lot of them had come from PR, they'd come from marketing that already.
Yeah.
They already knew, and I mean, I knew absolute zero about marketing.
Yeah.
I just went onto this social media marketing course because I liked being on social media.
Yeah.
And I could write, and I could, you know, do a bit of video and stuff like that. So I had, you know, to make a massive leap, but I sort of found out about personal branding because I joined a membership after I'd done Digital Mums, and I found out about personal branding, and that was what really kind of set me off on thinking about, I need to work on my own personal brand.
Yeah. Okay. So what is personal brand then, if you had to define it so that people know what you're talking about?
Well, I think it's about being seen. It's about being found. It's about getting in front of the people who you want to be seen by. So you have to know who your audience is, because I think a lot of businesses, a lot of business owners just think, if I put my stuff out there, people are going to see it and they're going to buy it. But we have to build relationships with people, and we have to get them to know, like, and trust us. So we can be seen, we can be found, we can be visible, we can become known, we can become remembered. Then when those people want to buy from us, or they want to work with us, or whatever it is, they're much more likely to come to us because they've seen us around and about, whether it be online or it be at networking, or they've read our blog, or whatever it is. It's that be in front of mind for people.
And people always talk about I can't remember how many touch points there are before they might get in touch, but it's really true, isn't it, that you need to be in as many places as you can be, really.
Yes, and I think, you know, choose, and obviously it's impossible to be everywhere, so choose the places that you want to be, because I know a lot of people always say, oh, you know, you should go to where your audience is, but unless you're comfortable being in that place. And I was comfortable being on LinkedIn. So but that only came about because I focused my mind on it. You know, what do I need to do to I need to post some stuff. And it was only thankfully because some people who are here on this call today saw it and liked it and commented and gave me a shout out. And Jeff was one of them. Jeff Young, who's here today. Jeff was one of my very, very first champions. You know, and it was people like Jeff who really helped me to become, gave me confidence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same for me with Jeff as well. Actually, you think it's amazing, isn't it, when you look at like the world now compared to what it was, that some of your best supporters are people that live in America or Australia
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's really helpful.
Exactly. And that's that whole thing, Sarah, about the fact that, just because people aren't going to buy from you,
Yeah,
they're doing the same job as you or whatever, but they build that, they see something in you that's worth shouting about. And so,
yes.
so they will do the hard work for you in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing, is it's definitely worth making connections with people that you wouldn't normally have considered. So I had a client that booked, she only lives about 10 miles away from me, but she booked me because she saw me on Gillian Whitney's live. So Gillian's based in Vegas.
Yes, yeah.
So this woman had been connected to Gillian and then saw me and booked me because of that. And you just think it's mad how you get work in that kind of way, really.
Yeah, yeah. And I think unless you kind of say focus your mind on it and you are strategic about it,
Yes.
you I've just seen Jeff's comment,
Yeah.
you are strategic about it, then it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen just by a process of osmosis. It doesn't just happen because you put a couple of posts out there. You have to have a strategy. You have to
Yes.
focus on who it is, what it is you want to say, and who it is that you want to speak to.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And that is hard, particularly when you're getting started, isn't it? Because you're kind of desperate for work. So you'll think, well, I just need to take on anyone. So you don't want to
Yeah.
narrow it down. But actually it's a bit of a vicious circle if you don't do that.
Well, exactly, and you do have to sort of take on anyone in the beginning because
Yes.
you don't get experience otherwise. And
Yes. Yeah.
without me dissing any of my previous clients, I remember some of those early ones that I had, and I wasn't a good fit for them. They weren't a good
Yeah.
fit for me. I wasn't a good fit for them, but I took the work on because it was experience.
Yeah.
And that hard, those first few steps, it's a bit like climbing the old mountain, isn't it, or hill. First few steps, it's like, why on earth am I doing this?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. I'm conscious of the
I
time.
know I am.
It flies, doesn't it? Uh, so you're both self-employed and you have an employed
Yeah.
role. So how do you balance those two commitments?
Well, I'm very, very lucky because running your own business is very hard. A couple
Yeah.
of years ago, I found that, it was really, I think a lot of us that have got our own businesses have found it difficult at times to get clients. So I did go for a job, and I've got a 17 and a half hour a week media and comms job. And I focus I make sure that I've got that time allocated for my job, and I know
Yeah.
what I've got to do. The thing is, what I like about that is the tasks are very prescriptive,
Yes.
as there would be in any job where
Yeah.
you're an employee, because you're told what to do, and you know what to do, and you know how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And then I keep Mondays. I tend to keep Mondays and Fridays free for me to run my business.
Yeah.
But obviously there is flexibility. Today is Thursday. I happen to be
Yeah.
on leave today from my
Yeah.
job. So
Yeah.
hence I can speak to you, Sarah. But yeah,
Excellent. Yeah.
but the thing that is great about it is that the two complement each other. And sometimes it's true. Something that I've done as a reel for my my business, I've then used the same format and idea and tune and audio and everything else, and done it for the paid role that I'm in. So
Yeah.
it's when you've got two roles that complement each other, you can get the balance.
Yeah. That's excellent. Okay, so I know that you're getting more speaking engagements at the moment. You had a great one in the Gherkin last week. So
Yeah.
how's that going, and how are you finding that work and all of that kind of stuff?
Well, I think it's just the whole thing about coming full circle back when we're talking about singing at the very beginning
Yeah.
of this chat. I'm always prepared to put myself out there. I like performing. I like being in front of an audience
Yeah.
because I feel that I've got something that to say, and that people will listen to. And I was
Yeah.
so grateful last week at the Gherkin. Because the audience were fantastic women in
Mm.
tech, and it's something I'm now going to focus on. So yes, you heard it here. I am going to get my speaker page sorted out on my
Brilliant.
website and put myself put myself forward to speak more at, you know, for paid speaking events, because I feel, you know, it's something I need to focus on. I want to focus on.
Excellent. Nice exclusive there. Thank you. So what advice have you got for students who are about to leave school, college or university and are looking for their first role?
Right. I mentioned to Sarah at the very beginning of the interview that I've got a newsletter. I publish a personal brand newsletter where I actually talked about this a few months ago in my newsletter about getting started. And I think because younger people, hopefully it should be a little bit more natural to them to use the tech and to use the social platforms. So I always say to people, whether they're whatever age they are, you know, do an audit of what you've done before, of what you've done before. So look at all those, as you do when you write your personal statement and so forth. Think about everything that you've done, write it down, ask your friends, ask your associates the sorts of things that they feel that are your you know, things that you've done that you may have forgotten about, or they may say to you, well, do you remember when you did that sort of that thing, or we're involved in this? So make sure you've got a good audit of all of that, but also look at what you're doing on your own personal social channels. Look at don't, you know, go and look at the videos of the dogs and the cats and whatever it is. You know, look at the people who are doing sort of talking head stuff and the way they're presenting themselves. Because I think if you can get into short form video, in terms of not necessarily doing it publicly, but I think in terms of presentation skills, it can be really, really helpful. So you can set up a little chat group with your friends and get used to that thing of when people ask you a question, you don't go, oh, I'm not sure what to say. You've got some clarity in terms of how you are going to promote yourself. It's that whole thing again, isn't it, about the 60-second pitch? And if you can pitch yourself in 60 seconds to a prospective employer or a course that you are wanting to join, you're going to really make a huge impression on them. So I would definitely say not necessarily using video to put out there publicly, but definitely practicing in private and practicing with your closest friends who will critique you and help you to focus.
That's really good advice. And I think particularly now with so my son's been going through an interview process for an apprenticeship, and quite a lot of that's kind of screening type stuff, and initial interviews are all video based. So you know, you've got interactive video where you've got to record yourself answering questions. So exactly what you say, trying to get into speaking a bit more fluently without the ums and the ers. Any practice you can do with that is going to be massively helpful.
I just think all of this, Sarah, to me, it's about training your brain, and once you've set down those neurological pathways in your brain, so that when you open your mouth connects to brain, and you say something that's worth listening to, that's going to grasp the person's attention who's on the other side of the screen or sitting across you at the desk, then your brain's already you know, on that pathway. So you'll be setting yourself up really well then for interviews or on the spot. Can you give me a sound bite or whatever it is, which will really help to hold you in good stead in terms of being memorable, which is what we're talking about, personal brand.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, thank you. We're pretty much out of time now. So thank you very much, Ella, for joining me today. Time's flown by. And thank you to everyone that's been watching and the chat that's been going on as we've been on. So thank you. Really appreciate it. If anyone does watch later, we'll go back in and answer questions. And I know Ella's got a resource for students about personal branding that we'll add into the links afterwards as well. So thank you, Ella.
Been great. Thanks, Sarah.
Good. Brilliant. And I'm back in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be chatting to Ethan Cobley, who is a data analyst on an apprenticeship degree program. So really looking forward to chatting to him. And that's probably going to be my focus for the next couple of months at least, talking to younger people who are on apprenticeship programs or early careers, to give some kind of really up-to-date practical information about what it actually feels like at the moment to be going through this kind of stuff, because definitely it's a hard time, I would say. So it's good to hear from people that are doing that kind of stuff. So there you go. So thank you again, Ella. I'm just going to end the show now and see you all next time. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye.